Now this is what I was just talking about. When the leading coefficient is something other than 1, to factor this, again, look for a GCF. Okay, here are the steps before you make B, if you want to list them out. Is there a GCF in this case? No. Always look for a GCF. Get in that habit. There are a couple ways you could do this. You can guess and check. Just throw numbers in there and FOIL it back out and see if it works. Which might not be a bad idea in this case because there's only one way to, one set of numbers to multiply to get 3. What are they? 3 and 1, right? And there's only one set of numbers to multiply to get 5. What are they? 1 and 5. So it might work out where you get lucky and get it the first or second time. But if you don't want to do that, you can follow this procedure. You multiply A times C, which is what? 15. List the factors of A and C, which I listed to be 1 and 15, 3 and 5. I didn't put those negatives up until later. So list the factors of 15, 1 and 15, 3 and 5. And then you want to choose the set of factors that add to get your B value. B in this case is negative 16. So which set of factors add to give you B? Yeah, negative 1 and negative 15. Did everybody follow that?
But that's a negative 16 though.
Why'd you make
Correct.
a negative and
Yeah,
negative?
negative 1 times, because these two have to multiply to give you positive 15, which they do. And
Why
they have
can't you
to
just
add to give you negative 16.
Oh,
That's why those had to both be
Okay.
negative. So I rewrote the problem. Ignore the red here. I rewrote the problem as 3x squared. All I did was rewrite the minus 16x to minus 1x and minus 15x. I took those two factors and wrote it as minus x minus 15x. So ignore the red. Don't ask me a question about the red yet. So you should have 3x squared minus x minus 15x minus 5. All right. Then we factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first two with a set of parentheses and the last two with a set of parentheses. But you got to be careful when you group the last two. Because what did I do here when I put a parenthesis here? What did I take out? I took a negative out, so that means I had to change this sign
whoa, what?
to a negative. When I put this parenthesis here, I took a negative out of the 15.
Why would you put the parenthesis there?
Because I'm factoring by grouping. That's the process. I put parentheses around the first two and the last two. Okay? Now, factor them both separately. What's your GCF here? X. What are you left with when you take an X out?
Hold up.
Yes.
Why did you not just do the parenthesis 3x squared minus x plus, and then you could make the next one negative?
You could, but follow my steps here and then you'll see why. If you want to make that a plus in the middle,
No, I see what you're doing.
yeah,
You're pulling the
'cause-
factor out of that one.
right. So you take an X out of here, you're left with 3x minus 1. Don't just put 3x. When you take an X out of X, you are left with something, and that something is 1. Here, your GCF is 5, 3x minus 1. See, if you had to change this sign, you would have gotten plus 1 down here. And when you factor by grouping, probably 95% of the time or more, these two should come out to be the same. Your two factors should come out to be the same. Okay, 3x minus 1 and 3x minus 1. All right. Now, let's stop there for a second before we get to the next step. If I gave you this, 3x plus 5x, how do you simplify that? What is 3x plus 5x? 8x. Why? What are you doing? Combining like terms. Very good. Okay, your like term is x, so you just add the coefficient in front, 3 and 5 is 8. Okay, so treat this, 3x minus 1 and 3x minus 1, that makes these like terms. So what do I do with the numbers in front of them? Do the same thing I did here. I combined 3 and 5 to get 8, so I combine the x and minus 5 to get x minus 5. And the 3x minus 1 comes down just like, and don't put 3x minus 1 squared. I didn't do that up here, did I? 3x and 5x is 8x, so it's just 3x minus 1. So here's your factored answer. X minus 5, 3x minus 1. If you want to check your work, you can. What's x times 3x? 3x squared minus x minus 15x is your minus 16x plus 5 is your answer. Let's try another one of those.
Wait, so the answer is.
The answer is right there at the bottom. That's your
Left.
factored answer. Okay?
That's a lot of.
All right, here, now I told you you could guess and check if you wanted to. But this, I wouldn't do that here because there's two different ways you can get 4, two different ways you can get 15. You can do 4, 4 and 1, or 2 and 2, 15, 1 and 15, or 3 and 5. So there's many different ways to multiply these. So I would use the method that we just did. Multiply A times C to get negative 60. List all the factors of 60. 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, 6 and 10. Then determine which set of factors, and I know one of these columns has to be negative, right? To give me a product of a negative. Do I get that? Now which set of factors would add to give you negative 4? It would have to be here. 6 and negative 10. Okay? So then I'm just going to rewrite the original problem. Rewrite the negative 4 using, now the order that you put the negative 10 and the positive 6 in doesn't matter. But I would highly recommend, if only one of them is negative, in this case the 10 is negative, I would write it first, then the plus 6 second. That way you don't have to worry about changing that sign when you group it. Okay? So I rewrote it saying 4x squared minus 10x plus 6x minus 15. Group those two. And what can I take out of this set? 2x. You're left with 2x minus 5. What can I take out of here? 3. You're left with 2x minus 5. Okay? Combine like terms. 2x plus 3 times and 2x minus 5 are your factors. Okay? If you want to check your work, you would FOIL it, and you would end up with 4x squared minus 4x minus 15. Question? Okay.
Wait, how did you do the first step? The one that has the. How did you do the grouping factors? Grouping the factors.
Well, the first step was over here. I multiplied A times C. That's the first step. 4 times negative 15 is negative 60.
Oh,
And then list all the factors. And then from there, we get into rewriting the negative 4 using these two numbers. Okay? All right, definition, write this down.
so
Okay, what?
what was negative 10? What was negative 10? Negative 6.
Negative 10 and plus 6x gives you the negative 4x, the middle term. I rewrote the middle term, the b value, negative 4x, using negative 10x and plus 6x. Same thing. Negative 10x plus 6x is negative 4x. That's all I did. Okay, write down this definition. Perfect square trinomial. If you have anything in the following forms, a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, or a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, they factor to a plus b squared or a minus b squared, depending on what your middle sign is. If your middle sign is a minus, then it's a minus b squared. If it's a plus, it's a plus b squared.
I'm so lost.
Okay. The example below, factor 9x squared minus 42x plus 49. The key here is to see if your trinomial fits into the formula. And to determine that, your a value and your c value must be perfect squares, which they are in this case. 9x squared is a perfect square. What's the square root of 9x squared? 3x. What's the square root of 49? 7. And since this is a minus, this has to be minus. This is your answer, 3x minus 7 squared. So if you were to write that out as 3x minus 7 times 3x minus 7, FOIL it, and you should get 9x squared minus 42x plus 49. But you need to be careful. I may give you a problem, or the book may give you a problem. They might try to trick you. They might make this 41x, okay, which means it's not factorable. All right, so it's important to check your work. So when I FOIL this out, I should get 42x in this case. Now, if it tells you that it is a perfect square trinomial, then you don't have to worry about checking. But if it doesn't, then again, your first key is to look at the first number and last number. Well, even before that, what do you always do when you factor? What do you look for? GCF. There is no GCF in this case. So then my next thought would be that it's a perfect square trinomial because of these two numbers being perfect squares. Okay? Yes?
So you didn't need to do anything with the negative 42 in that row?
Well, the negative 42 is in there. You just don't see it unless you wrote it all out. If you wrote this out as 3x minus 7 times 3x minus 7 and FOILed it back out, it would be simplified to that.
Okay.
Okay? But no, in getting your answer, you don't even need to deal with that 42.
Oh, thank you.
All right? Next definition, and then we are finished.
So there's no way of knowing if it's a perfect square unless it says it is.
If it tells you it's a perfect square trinomial, then it is. If it just says to factor it, then I would check my work at next definition, difference of squares. A squared minus b squared factors, if you have something in the form of a squared minus b squared, it will factor to a plus b and a minus b. Our example is x squared minus 64. Your key there is are a and b perfect squares? Yes. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of 64 is 8. So it would factor to x plus 8 and x minus 8. Or the other way around. The order doesn't matter. X minus 8, x plus 8. Below that, x squared plus 64 is not factorable. There's no way that you could break or have two binomials that multiply to give you x squared plus 64. This formula is difference of squares. What's difference mean? Subtraction. There is not a sum of squares formula. So you cannot factor a sum of squares. Okay, so if I give you that problem, x squared plus 64, you would just say not factorable.